YouTube, it's your boy, Blue Blood Sports TV, back at y'all with another one. So, two-time junior middleweight world champion superstar boxer who currently is the unified WBC, WBA, IBF, Ring Magazine, junior middleweight world champion superstar boxer Jermell Ironman Charlo. He weighs in on the fact that everybody has an issue with the judges' scorecards at the end of his undisputed showdown with undefeated WBO Argentine star junior middleweight world champion boxer Brian Castano. That took place this Saturday night, in which the fight ended in a draw. Majority of the boxing world, 72% of the boxing world, believe that Brian Castano won the fight. So, with that said, the judges' scorecard read as this: 114, 113 in favor of Brian Castano. Close fight. Another judge ruled it 114, 114. Draw. Another judge ruled it 117, 111 in favor of Jermell Charlo, which means Jermell Charlo won 9 rounds to 3. So one judge saw Brian Castano edging the fight out. Another judge saw the fight so close he couldn't even pick who won. And then the last judge saw the fight so far apart for Jermell Charlo that it wasn't even a close fight. So with that said, a lot of people, because this fight took place in Texas, San Antonio, Texas, Jermell Charlo being from Houston, Texas, felt like it was a bit of home cooking. And that Jermell Charlo got the nod, he got the benefit of the doubt because he was at home. Like I said, most people, they took a vote. Showtime took a vote. And they stated that 72% of the boxing world thought that watched the fight thought Brian Castano won the fight. I personally thought Brian Castano won the fight. Now, what made it a close fight is the fact that Jermell Charlo badly hurt Brian Castano in the second round, and then he badly hurt Brian Castano in the 10th round. Both times seemed as if he was getting ready to stop Brian Castano. Had no legs, wobbling around the ring. But when you watch it in slow motion, after he hurt Brian Castano, it looked like the punches that he was landing was having more effect than it actually was. It was that the initial punch he never recovered from, because the punches thereafter wasn't landing clean. But Brian Castano's legs from the initial punch were gone. So with that said, he was wobbling and using the ropes to hold him up. Seemed he was on the verge of getting stopped, both second and 10th round. So one judge scored that 10th round a 10-8 round for Jermell Charlo. Had he not scored it a 10-8 round, that's the judge that had it 114, 114. Had he not scored the 10th round a 10-8 round, the fight goes to Brian Castano, 114, 113. He gave Jermell Charlo an extra point because of the way how badly Brian Castano looked hurt, and because it seemed like he was on the verge of getting stopped. So that particular judge gave the round a 10-8 round to Jermell Charlo. But had he scored it the correct way, because you give a 10-8 round for a knockdown. There was no knockdown. Brian Castano, he weathered the storm. Okay? And so then he came back to win the 11th round. So with that said, he weathered the storm in the 10th round. You don't score the 10-8 round if he didn't hit the canvas. That's for guys that hit the canvas. Although he was hurt initially from the first initial punch that landed and got the party started, got his legs wobbling all over the place. But if you look closely as they replayed it, Jermell Charlo didn't land anything clean after that. Brian Castano was blocking it, parrying it, and moving around the ring to try to survive. And yes, he did try to survive, but his legs wasn't there. And so that judge scored a 10-8 round. But again, had he not scored 10-8 round, Brian Castano wins the fight. 114, 113 on his card, then 114, 113 on the other judge's scorecard. That would have offset that 117, 111 card. And Brian Castano would be the undisputed junior middleweight world champion today. But that judge scored it 10-8 round. And had the other judge seen it as a very close fight, a very entertaining fight, and a very competitive fight, this might have went in the direction of Brian Castano as well. And so there's a bit of an outrage over those scorecards. So Jermell Charlo, he responds to those scorecards, and he says he's in agreement that that was a horrible scorecard. It was a much closer fight. He says, I thought it was a much closer fight than that judge had it. That was too far apart. Kudos to Jermell Charlo for admitting that, no, that's not right. This is in the manner of when four-division world champion Mexican superstar boxer Saul Canelo Alvarez, when he fought Floyd Mayweather and one judge had it a draw, and Floyd Mayweather looked in surprise, and then Canelo Alvarez immediately responded in the ring and said, that's not right. That's not right. We got to fix that. I lost. Kudos to Canelo Alvarez right there in the moment to say, that's not right. That's not right. I lost. That's not right. And Jermell Charlo, kudos to Jermell Charlo for saying, listen, that wasn't right. This was a much closer fight than that judge scorecard indicated. Even his corner, well-renowned trainer, future Hall of Famer, two-time trainer of the year, Derrick James, he was telling Jermell Charlo going into the 12th round, you need a knockout to be victorious. And then in the 10th round, I believe he told him, you're losing this fight. So even his corner, and Jermell Charlo says this was a much closer fight. The other two judges say it's a much closer fight. The fans voted Brian Castano. 72% of the fans said Brian Castano won the fight. That means only 28% of the fans thought that Jermell Charlo won the fight. And so one judge sees it so lopsided that it's not even competitive in favor of Jermell Charlo. This hurts the sport of boxing. So when we say YouTube sensations like Logan Paul, Jake Paul, KSI, they're hurting the sport of boxing with these exhibition bouts, or Floyd Mayweather doing exhibition bouts, coming back out of retirement, those are hurting the sport of boxing. No, the best not fighting the best is what hurts the sport of boxing, and judges getting the scorecards incorrect, seeming have made their decision before the fight even started. That's what's hurting the sport of boxing. When you have a judge say 117, 111, 9 rounds to 3, Brian Castano wasn't even in the fight, when he hurt Jermell Charlo a few times as well. Not as visible as Jermell Charlo hurt him in that 2nd and 10th round. But you can see a few times Jermell Charlo was hurt and was buzzed. Jermell Charlo may have a more granite chin than Brian Castano, so it doesn't show as much. But Jermell Charlo was getting hit with big, clean punches. Brian Castano was the more effective pressure fighter. He was more active. He landed more power punches. He threw more punches. So how did this judge see a fight that wasn't even competitive in favor of Jermell Charlo? I could tell you why. Because his mind and his decision was already made up before the fight even started. He never gave Brian Castano a chance to win the fight. He came into this fight with all intentions of Jermell Charlo leaving the ring in his home city, in his home state of Texas, as an undisputed champion. It didn't matter. Unless Brian Castano got a knockout, that judge wasn't going to see a victory for Brian Castano. He did not see a way for Brian Castano to be victorious. He didn't foresee Brian Castano standing there with all 4 major sanction bodies and the Ring Magazine belt. That's what hurts the sport of boxing. And yet, they'll question the media for their approach. When you have situations like this tells you that there's something wrong going on behind the scenes. If a judge that's sitting ringside can watch a competitive fight that the fighter himself, both fighters thought it was a competitive fight. Both corners thought it was a competitive fight. The other 2 judges thought it was a competitive fight. The fans voted in favor opposite of what this judge, 72% is overwhelming. That's not close. I could see if it was 55-45. It wasn't even close. 72% of the fans thought Brian Castano won the fight. That means it wasn't even close. that it was a competitive fight at the very least. So how did this judge have it 117, 111? That's what hurts the sport of boxing. And kudos for Jermell Charlo to take this stand and say this was incorrect. Bad judging scorecard. It was a much closer fight. I still thought I won, but it was a much closer fight than that judge had it. Kudos to Jermell Charlo, because these things are what's wrong with the sport of boxing. So when you question and say, well, how could the boxing commission allow gloves that are manipulated in the fight? They will never do that. Or how can the judges, favor one fighter or be a fan of a fighter? They're human beings as well. And they could be fans of fighters as well. They participate in the sport, the well-being of the sport, but that doesn't mean that they're not fans. More than likely, they're fans is why they got into the sport, or for a paycheck. And that's even worse. If you got in the sport of boxing for a paycheck, then that's even worse. That means you could be allegedly bought off. That's what that means. And if you're a fan of the sport of boxing, right, then that also means you can be swayed as well. I believe that these judges should be sitting above the ring, as in tennis, and I believe that these judges should have earmuffs on, that they cannot hear the crowd. They can't hear the crowd oohing and ahhing, okay? They can't hear announcers. They can't hear anything. All they're focusing on is the sport of boxing, what's taking place in front of them. I also believe that they should have they should be sitting in some sort of blinding booth where they can't see the crowd, where it's just a focus this way. You know how you put the blinders on a horse in a racetrack so he can't get distracted by anything around him? That's what these judges need to have, and they should be sitting above the ring where they're at least ring level. They're below the ring, so they're looking up. They should be at least ring level within a booth where they can't have no distractions left or right. Only thing they're focusing on now, they will obviously be able to see the crowd forward because they're looking forward. But they more than not, you're focusing on the fight itself, and with earmuffs on or headphones where they cannot hear anything that can sway their decisions, and just watch a fight. That, I believe, is the solution. But that's all I got for y'all. Make sure you hit the like button. Drop a comment in the comment section. Let me know what y'all think. Y'all already know what it is. It's your boy Blue, Blue Blood Sports TV. Hate, like, comment, and subscribe. You haven't subscribed, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the bell icon to get all the new notifications. Follow me on Instagram at Blue Blood Sports TV, all one word. Y'all already know what it is. Shout out to the entire LDBC. Shout out to New Media. Shout out to Black Media Raw. Make sure you like and share these videos. That's all I got for y'all. Peace.
You're watching Blue Blood Sports TV. Wow.